Hi everyone, it's really nice to meet you. I'm going to put on a share of a presentation in a few seconds. So thank you so much for having me here. I'm going to present myself in a second. I want to say thank you for Israeli Embassy at Warsaw for inviting me to come and speak with you. I'm going to share with you the case study of my organization. It is called the Cyber Education Center. I am the Partnerships and Marketing VP in this organization. I've been almost for 20 years in the marketing and advertising and strategic managing roles in various companies. And in the last 10 years, the Cyber Education Center mission is to promote social mobility for youth who are living in Israel's periphery, where they are challenged with fewer opportunities than their peers residing in the central part of Israel. And before I share with you the case study itself, I just want to start with a quick background of Israel. Hopefully you see me now, changing the slide. If not, maybe Piotr, who is the organizer, can tell me not. So, Israel, 2021, a startup nation. First, let me start with saying that this is a very, very small country. It's very young. We celebrated 73 years just yesterday. And we are indeed a very small country, not only in size. We are 22,000 square kilometers, very small country. But mainly we are small in population, only 9 million people in our population today. And though we are young, our economy is quite developed. In summary, Israel is indeed, as they call it, a startup nation. Israel's main growth engine is its booming high-tech industry. This industry alone accounts for 9% of total of our GDP, and almost half of all of our export comes from the high-tech industry. And because of our significant high-tech industry and startup market, our global innovation score is 5th in the world. Again, we are one of the smallest countries, but we are 5th in the world in the innovation score. And in terms of employment market, actually the high-tech industry with over 200,000 employees in Israel enjoys the best terms of employment of all of the other industries in Israel. As for us in the Cyber Education Center, this means a very high mobility leverage possibility for youth around the country. And the last point I want to say about Israel is that we have a mandatory army service. All of the teens, when they arrive at the age of 18, boys and girls, have to go to the army for 2 years for girls or 3 years for boys army service. And due to this very long period, many office positions in the army are a gateway to various career possibilities after release. And I will get back to this point later on in the presentation. I'm moving on. Now, another point that I would like to make about Israel is that geography in Israel matters a lot. Israel's periphery versus the center of Israel characteristics. First, most of the majority of populations, as you see in the graph, live in Israeli center. Almost 60% live in the center of Israel. And the periphery, we have mid-periphery, which is about 20% of the population, and very, very strong periphery, which is also around 20% of the population. And the characteristics of the periphery is that the socioeconomic index of the people living there is quite low. And this means also in terms of education and in terms of occupational and in terms of the income per month, it's quite lower than those of the central part of Israel. Those who want to find job or a career opportunities, it's very, very hard to find them in the geography parts of the periphery. And those who want to study something in the periphery, there are very limited educational opportunities because most of the teachers reside in the central part of Israel, those of the professional teachers mostly. As far as you go to the periphery, you find a very strong lack of professional teachers in various educational fields. The infrastructure is much more outdated than the one in the center of Israel in computers and not only computers field. And in terms of enrichment programs, extracurricular enrichment programs, you find very few of them in the outskirts of Israel versus the central part of Israel. So the geography part does really better for those who live in the periphery. And this is where we enter the Cyber Education Center. What we do, our mission, is to enhance equal opportunities to teens and youth around the periphery of Israel. And we are making sure that they get cyber and technology and computer education, that it is as good as the one that kids in the central part of Israel enjoy, and to some extent even much better. This is what we do, and we are actually enable them to enter and access the booming high-tech industry, enjoy everything that I said that they can enjoy, that this industry can offer them, and mainly reach their potential at the end. So why did we choose cyber education as a leverage? It has different answers, and I'm going to reveal 3 of them. The first one is because, as I told you before, high-tech industry in Israel is booming for many years, and currently this industry is not diverse enough. Most of the employees come from the strong central part of Israel, and if we want to help kids from the far ends of Israel enjoy this industry, we need to give them and expose them and teach them technological know-how that they don't get in the school system of Israel. And when I talk about tech know-how, I actually refer to programming and networks and operating systems and cyber education that will give them an advantage when they will try to enter the high-tech industry later on in life. The second reason is essential skills. The cyber education and computer education is a wonderful platform to teach many essential 21st century skills that are needed in tomorrow's employment market. Among those skills that we are working very, very hard to implement in all of our education programs are independent learning and research capabilities, efficient problem-solving methodologies, teamwork, self-efficacy. We implemented those skills in every program so that all of our participants can enjoy them. And we see that as a very crucial thing to help them become a better employee in the future. And the third reason is that these subjects are great fields to help youth with excellence and implementing excellence as a core value in life. We embed excellence as a mindset, as a life value through all of our learning materials and exercises. We want all of our program participants to learn not only knowledge, but the process of which they can keep advancing and trying to be a better version of themselves at all the time. Okay, so our strategic course of action actually incorporates 2 different actions. The first one is developing and operating education programs. All of them are extracurriculum and enrichment programs that are usually learned after school hours. All of them appeal to kids from the ages of 12 to 18, mostly from the periphery of Israel, as I said before, and they are all characterized with a very deep learning process. In all of our education programs, we have currently 3,000 participants around Israel. And the second course of action is we develop virtual learning courses in the mode of MOOCs, if you know this massive online open course. We actually have 6 MOOCs today, high quality online courses that are offered for free for everybody who wants to take part and learn anything about cyber, programming, technology. Until today, we have been producing these kind of MOOCs for the last 4.5 years. Over 100,000 students already took one of our courses. And if I'm going to summarize a decade of impact, as I said, we are already we are in operations for the last 10 years. Currently, we have 240 classes around Israel every year, studying between once a week and 2 times a week, depends on the type of program, either for a junior high or for high school. We have a total of 3,000 program participants around the country, and until today, we already have 2,000 graduates that's finished any one of our high school programs. And if you remember in my first slide, I mentioned the Army and the mandatory service. So most of our high school programs actually prepare our participants to enter any one of the Army's cyber and technology units. And the reason why we do that is, as I said before, the Army is a major step towards career in the end in Israel, because everybody has to go through the Army. And so we are actually preparing them to enlist to any of the Army's of cyber units. And I'm very proud to say that today, currently, in all of our high school programs, around 70% of those who participate in one of our programs actually is able to be accepted to one of the cyber and tech units in the Israeli Defense Forces, which is a very, very, very high percentage of those studying with us. And we are very proud of that, because it means that those 70% who are actually able to enter those units will not even most likely, definitely will be able to enter the high-tech industry after they are released from the Army. And because we don't only care about the 70% that are accepted to the tech units of the Army, we also check those who are not able to enter those units. And we see that our impact of our high school programs goes beyond our Army service. In the last survey that we conducted among those who graduated after the Army release, we saw that 88% of those who did not enter the Army in the technology unit, also after they were released from the Army, 48% of them went to study in the university any of the tech fields, such as programming and computers, and 40% were already able to start working in the high-tech industry. So we see that we have a very strong impact on those who are entering our high school programs. Now, I said about case studies, so let's discuss the key success factors that were able to bring us to those very high numbers and this really strong impact that we have on our participants. And I'll start with discussing the first one that we were able to pinpoint, and that is motivation. We need to find a strong motivation that will be the engine for learning. And the motivation is for two audiences. First is for the participants who are enlisting to our programs, and second is for the State of Israel, who needs to fund those programs. So for participants, as I said, in Israel, the Army service is a very strong motivator, because everybody has to go to it, and many knows that when they enter the Army to a very sought after job in the Army, they will be able to find a very nice career after they are released. So we know that many want to be able to enter the technology and cyber units in the Army. So this is a very strong motivation for kids to enter our programs. And for the State of Israel, well, we work closely with the Ministry of Defense. We are working with them to develop all of our materials. We are working with them to pinpoint who is the right participants to take part in our programs. And Ministry of Periphery, of course, because they are very keen in finding the ways to develop the periphery. So we are working closely with both these ministries. So this is the motivation for both these parts. A second part, or a second key success factor to the way we work and why it's working so good in the last 10 years is that we are working in a continuity model. We started at early ages, and we continue on with the kids until they're high school. So when they are released and going to the Army, they'll be able to enter the high-tech career. We start actually at junior high school. As I said before, we started the first program was actually for high school students. It's called Magshimim, and it is 3 years of a program and very intense. But we learned in the deep periphery that we need to start much earlier, because when we get to the 9th grader and 10th grader, if we start talking with them about technology in this of a progress age, most of them will not understand what we want. So we developed also a program for junior high schoolers, which is actually, we start with them at the 8th grade, and they go with us for 2 years. And after that, we are telling them about Magshimim, and they can go to the high school programs. And also, another continuity which we are offering today is for girls, because girls in Israel are not participating in technology field like boys, and we've pinpointed that at very early stages. So we've developed programs specifically for girls. So as you can see, we offer continuity from the beginning of junior high school on through high school, and then army service and high-tech career. The third key success factor is that we are very, very keen about our content and about our content standards, and we are developing it in very, very high standard. Our pedagogy and learning materials are created, as I said, first in cooperation with the Army and the State of Israel to make sure that what we offer is indeed what is needed in the end. And we are working in pilots. We are starting something, we develop it, we implement, we see the response of the kids, and we are doing modifications and upgrades all the time. We have our own research and development unit inside our organization, and they are working closely all the time with the kids and with the State of Israel to see that our pedagogy and all the learning materials, that they are working as they should when we develop them. We implement blended learning in everything we do. Some of our materials need an instructor to teach in class, and then we give some of the materials for the kids to study themselves at home. As I said, we are working very strong to build skills, learning skills, and the blended learning is actually one of the things that is enabling us to give this skill to the kids, because we expect them in some aspects to learn themselves and bring the questions to the classroom to ask the instructors. Also, infrastructures. As I said before, the periphery is not as developed as the center of Israel in terms of infrastructures. So wherever we see that it's necessary, we bring the networks with ourselves. We bring the Wi-Fi with us. We give the kids laptops so they can study, because we know in the periphery many kids don't have accessibility to computers. So we are very strong about the infrastructures themselves. And we are also working to bring the kids exquisite learning practices, not only written materials, but also peak days and hackathons. We take them to industry tours to see for themselves what high-tech industry looks, so they will have a very interesting and experiential learning practice. And the last key success factor is excellent instructors. We are working really, really hard in bringing excellent instructors to our programs. First, what we do is to make sure that those who teach in our classes are themselves students in universities learning computer sciences. And so they are not very far away from the kids in the class. They are just a few years older than them, and they speak their language, but they do come from the professional field of learning computers, and they are the one who teaches our high school and junior high school students in our programs. We are implementing very, very meaningful recruiting processes to make sure, first, they are professional, they know what they need to teach, and also that they are very committed in their desire to help kids from the periphery to learn and to study and to succeed. And the last is that we invest a lot of effort of our organization in the training process to teach the ones that were accepted to be our trainers. Actually, 1/4 of our employee cost every year that we pay for the instructors that we have in our classes goes to their training processes. We put a lot of effort in that. So I want to summarize those key success factors and everything that I said until now. So cyber education, we see that as a basis for a very lucrative future career. And this is why we chose this field to teach the kids and give them opportunity for mobility. And we see that as an essential part of life skills. We use cyber education as a base for teaching them life skills that they can take and implement whatever they choose to do in their futures. And the main key success factors that we see in all of our programs is to find the right motivation, both for the participants and the funding partners that we worked with. We use an early start and continuity model in our programs, and we are very, very keen on our content and the trainers in high standards. So this is it for me. I want to thank you, and I'm going to stop share and wait, and I'm going to go back to you. And now, if you want to ask anything, if you want to learn something more, now it's your turn. The chat is open. You see me, right? I'm still here. Thank you, Sylvia, for answering. Do you have perhaps any questions regarding what I just presented? Do you want to learn anything more? What about the equipment? Sylvia asked, what about the equipment? Wait, there is another question. Could you tell the age of pupil in high or junior high school? I say junior high school in Israel starts at the age of 12 and finishes at the age of 15. High school is between the ages of 16 and 18. Our program for junior high is for students at the ages of eighth graders and ninth graders. So it's 14 and 15. And our programs for high school, usually they last for 3 years, and they start at the 10th grade, finish at the 12th grade. What about the equipment, Sylvia asked? The equipment, again, all of our high school students get laptops from us. Part of our funding needs is to make sure that every pupil that goes into any one of our programs have a laptop for them to use, because our programs are very intensive and they need a laptop all the time. They study for 6 hours with us, with instructors in the classroom, either 1 or twice a week, and they have homework that it's at least 4 to 5 hours a week. So they need the laptop to be very accessible to them. This is why we give every high school participants in our programs their own laptop for usage. And also, if we see that we go to any of the cities that we work in, we have around 25 regional places where we work around Israel. And in those regions, kids from many, many cities around that come. And if we see that in that focus region, there is problem with the Wi-Fi or problem with the classes, we bring the Wi-Fi with ourselves, we bring the laptops with ourselves, we bring the equipment that is necessary. It's part of the funding base that we need. Thank you, Katarina, for your compliment. Does learning languages go with cyber educations? Yes, of course. Anna asked if we teach them programming, right? You asked about programming. Yes, we teach them mostly C and C++ and many others. Also Python we teach. We teach several programming languages as a part of the cyber education. This is the start of learning cyber is usually starting with programming. Polish schools have sometimes problem with the lack of equipment, Sylvia said. Well, I totally agree with that. We know this problem is also evident in Israel, and this is why we make sure that we bring the equipment with us to the places where we work. Katarzina, I hope I said it right, asked, could you give me some details of the blended learning system? Is the future of education definitely? Okay, that's a really good question. What we do today is that we are learning several models, and some of it, as I said, we are developing MOOCs. So MOOCs is totally not blended. This is totally online learning, and we are ourselves developing them. What we do is we are taking those MOOCs that we already developed, and some of them teach Python, some of them teach networks, some of our MOOCs teach, I forgot the word, that it's Python for the next level, not for beginners, but for those who already know Python. So we teach network Python and others. And what we do is we use those courses that we already developed in the classroom. We some of our models ask the kids to go and learn at home. and then they bring the questions to the instructor in the classroom. This is it called backwards learning. You learn it, you learn by yourself, and then you go to the classroom to ask if you have any questions to the instructors. But we have several different models, and other models are those that kids learn by themselves, and once a week they have instruction session, and they meet together and ask each other questions, and then go back and do the practices they need at home. So we have many various blended models that we are testing and experimenting all the time. I'm going to see if Katerina, if you have any other questions about the blended learning, please feel free to ask one more. Clara asks, is the topic of media literacy included into the program? Media literacy. We are not teaching media, by the way, because we are teaching technology and not digital studies. We are, there are many organizations in Israel that are, they are experts in digital learning, which includes the media part, like social media and searches on Google and how to use a Microsoft Office. I think in those parts, Israel has many suppliers and NGOs that know how to teach that. We ourselves are experts in higher technology field, in programming and cyber, and the parts that are more complex, not only in learning, but also in teaching them. So we are concentrating on those parts of technology. Media literacy, as I said, no ethics. Of course, Clara asked if we are teaching ethics. Well, cyber education, if we teach it without ethics, is a very big and strong and dangerous tools in the wrong hands. And we know that. This is why all of our courses and all of our programs incorporate ethics teaching inside them to make sure that the kids know how big the responsibility they have in their hands when they are learning cyber. So yeah, the answer is yes to your question. Could you tell, Edita is asking, could you tell some about subjects in program? You told about languages, C++. Okay, if you want me to, I can answer about the syllabus, but we are, you know what, I'm going to open one paper I just wrote a few days ago just to make sure that I'm not missing anything. We teach a lot of things. Our programs are very intense, as I said. C++ and C and Python is main programs we teach, but we have other programs we teach, program languages that we teach. We do a lot of teaching algorithms and operators and logic expressions and functions and databases, management of memory in the computers. We teach programming client servers on the basis of sockets. We teach various protocols in everything regarding networks. We teach research in the cyber environment. Our students study a lot, really. 3 years, very intense. Subject I answered. I think you have mentioned, Carolina is asking, you have mentioned that still 12% is still not well educated in terms of cyber education. Where did I mention that? I'm sorry. For what regions they are? And you keep trying to give them this opportunity to take part in your study program. Carolina, can you clarify your questions? Because I don't remember saying anything about 12% is not well educated in terms of cyber education. Cyber education is not something that is taught mostly in Israel education system. This is why we teach the extra curriculum. So if you can clarify the question, I'll be happy to answer. Clara is asking, because I know great educators from Israel who create EG programs, including Wikidata into the education. Also, another group is providing teaching of Wikipedia tools. You're right. Israel, as I said, is a booming market for everything regarding technology, programming, cyber. So, and I know that there are many people who are concerned about this field not being taught well enough in schools. So they are creating various platforms to teach that. We are one of those creators. You're welcome, Clara. That's it for me. Again, as I said before, Katarina, you asked about the 12%, and Carolina, you asked about cyber education. I didn't quite understand your question, so if you want to ask again, I'll be happy to answer. And I don't see, okay, could you tell how lesson, Edita is asking, could you tell how a lesson looks like? Okay, so our classes usually are about 15 pupils together. Our major high school program is twice a week, after school, usually from 5 o'clock at evening until 8:30 at night. And the lesson usually looks like that you have an instructor. And I need to cut between pre-corona, after corona. Pre-corona, everything is physical, in a class, physical classroom. Kids come together, the instructor comes with them, and they study together. There is a presentation that the instructor usually is making on the basis of our learning materials, and he's teaching them. Kids have a lot of homework to do between the lessons. If they have questions, they ask regarding the homework. Usually the session is involving the instructor teaching some bit of the learning material, and then the kids, the pupils, need to go and do some kind of a practice during the session itself, during the lesson. They need to go. All of our school, or all of our system is hands-on teaching. They learn something, and they have to practice it through various types of different types of practices. And then they go home, they do homework, and this is going on between all of the courses. And after the corona, all of the sessions had to move on to be, of course, online. We changed everything to being online. We made the classes a little bit shorter to be able to help the kids stay focused. So this is what a lesson look like. By the way, in our girls programs, as I said, we have unique programs for girls, and it's only for girls. In addition to the instructor, we also have a teacher's aide that is in the classroom to help with any questions or any challenges that arise during the session. Another question, Katarina is asking, do you offer some online courses for foreign students and pupils? I'd love my daughter, 12 years old, to try this pedagogy. Well, most of our MOOCs are now in Hebrew. We have one that we have translated to Arabic right now. We don't have English yet, but it is now we are now working on translating some of our MOOCs to English. So if you want to be patient, touch base with me in a few months, and I'll be able to give you the answer that we already have our English courses.